welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing my journey with ADHD and alternative medicine and different remedies to really help me in that process of transitioning from being much younger with ADHD to being a kind of a young adult because I'm 18 now. So why don't we get started way back at the beginning? So I was diagnosed with ADHD, I think when I was about 5 or 6. So, this is back in the time period where I was taking I couldn't take pills at the time. So I was doing applesauce, and then the pill would be spilled over the spoonful of applesauce. And then I would have to then eat that, and that would pretty much be how I would take my medicine in the morning. There used to be this sticker that was offered at the time that you could also wear. I don't remember all the logistics of that specifically, but I remember that also being an option at the time. And the way that my ADHD was then kind of handled and maintained throughout my years of elementary school is I would go to these things called SNAP classes. So it'd be like after school tutoring where I would go to another maybe high school or middle school, whatever the situation may be, and then I would get all of my homework done pretty much. I didn't really have my parents helping me with my homework. That was a really big struggle for us. So I would just go to another teacher during after school, and then we would work on assignments with other students who also struggled. So I was in multiple schools, all throughout elementary school, literally just going to different people to get help with my math homework, which really was what the issue was. English and so on and so forth was never really an issue for me, but math homework was. Now, how my ADHD manifested in the classroom is whenever there was a math test, I would be a part of the group of kids who would be leaving to go and sit in a separate room and have the test read to them, or either just be in a separate environment just so that they could focus and really, answer the questions more efficiently. I never really understood that, but I also think that a lot of it is just the assumption that, you're going to be more anxious, which is okay at times because I did feel anxious a little bit more than I think some of my counterparts did who didn't have ADHD. Or sometimes the issue was just not being able to focus altogether. So sometimes that would be the issue. And then I would do, so I was doing the medication, I was doing the SNAP tutoring. I also had multiple friends of my mom's who were helping me with just math specifically because the struggle was real. And the way that the struggle showcased itself is with my standardized test scores. So we would have these tests, it was evaluation, something like that. These little evaluations we would take in elementary school, or I would take in elementary school, and they were little tests. I would literally have to go to random schools to different people who would kind of monitor the different ways in which my mental ability, intelligence was altering in terms of what grade level I was on with ADHD. And they would run these tests on me. And basically these tests would be testing my memory, testing my math skills, and just ability to not so much solve a problem correctly, but my ability to understand how to go about solving a problem. So let's say things like word problems, they would really stump me, fractions, decimals, even some addition and subtraction at times. So I would have to list a list of numbers backwards, but I would have to put them in order. So I would have to do different things like that, memory checking, but also just comprehension, arithmetic, so on and so forth. So there was a lot that went into my ADHD journey in elementary school, but also in the classroom, I had to have a teacher in the classroom who was specifically for the group of kids with IEPs. So I had a caseworker who would work with me throughout the year, checking out my test scores. We would have a meeting with, maybe a counselor or my mom from high school, and then several of my teachers who've been monitoring my progress in math with this caseworker. And then we would discuss every few months out of the school year, all throughout elementary school and middle school, these two are kind of blended experiences for me, what my progress had been in the class. So then I go to middle school, right? I'm no longer taking the SNAP classes. I only have my math class with the collab teacher, which is what they refer to it as. And, things are going pretty smoothly as far as algebra and things are concerned. In my first year of high school, I only had one collab teacher, and I still had an IEP. My second year of high school, I did not have a collab teacher in my geometry class, and I still had an IEP. But it was my second semester of my sophomore year that I no longer had an IEP and no longer had a caseworker anymore because I didn't have one. And my test scores finally matched up with my grade level. So all this evaluating and all of these progress check-ins, I found them very mentally exhausting, and I just found them so discouraging because for somebody whose sister literally goes to a school that is a little bit below an Ivy League, it just always felt like a slap in the face to see her doing so well and to constantly feel like I was digressing. And really, it wasn't even that I was digressing. It was just that I was struggling because I was trying. And it wasn't that my sister was just so much smarter than me, so much better at everything else than me. It was just that some people don't have to work as hard as you to understand one concept. Or sometimes they just understand it in a different way that allows them to have shortcuts when they're doing homework or they're taking a test or whatever it is. And we can get into some of those study tips and things on another video and ways that I've learned to kind of work around my ADHD and also work with it. But for the sake of this video, I definitely would just say that I learned, throughout all of this struggle that regardless of the amount of progress checks and standardized testing, it still never really was a proper assessment of my intelligence. And I take myself to be a very much so intelligent person, and I always just kind of felt like there was just a degree of shallowness attached to other people's perception of my intelligence, because they would never really consider things like an EQ, which is your emotional intelligence, or other things like musical intelligence or athletic ability or other intelligences that spread far beyond just your ability to comprehend 12 questions dealing with decimals and basic math arithmetic. So I always just felt kind of overlooked in that capacity because I wanted to be recognized for the parts of my intelligence that weren't necessarily attached to the way that my test scores looked. Because I knew plenty of people at the time, because I made, of course, a lot of friendships in these groups with people who were going outside of classrooms, had IEPs, so on and so forth, people who also had the same caseworker as me. So in making these attachments with these people, I realized that we all kind of felt overlooked, in a sense that why is it that the educational system really emphasizes that test scores are a proper, I guess you could say, a proper example or even representation of your intellectual ability? Because really that's what the IQ test is your intelligence on the spot. But your intelligence is not limited to math, science, and English. Your intelligence is the all-encompassing factors that really kind of make up how you interact with your world. And I think that expanding our idea of that is something that I never really was taught at that age. So making videos like this is really important for me because as I talk about my journey through high school, middle school, and elementary school, I definitely learned along the way that my definition of what it means to be smart began to change, because the ability to really recognize and to redefine that the systems in place are actually just made to make you feel like you're less than, you really start to see the flaws in the ways in which you're being taught and the ways in which you're being tested in this instance. Not this being like the darkest minds, I literally felt like an anomaly. And I'm already an anomaly. I'm black, I'm female, I'm a lesbian. I'm an anomaly. I understand that. But being an anomaly because of a mental disorder like ADHD, and just that word disorder always just broke me in a way that the other aspects of my identity never really did, because it felt like a personal attack on my intelligence. And now it doesn't feel that way. And I just hope that for anybody else who's been told that they're slow or been told that they're dumb or has even ever been compared to their test scores or has even ever thought that their test scores and even their grades were a proper reflection of their intelligence, you are not correct. That is not a proper reflection. That is not a proper representation. And it is far past time that we look past what the results are on paper and really start looking at who the person is beyond it all. So with that being said, I would like to get into something that people never talk about, and that being why ADHD benefits you and me. So I did a lot of research, and you have to keep in mind, it's been years since I've had SNAP classes, since I've had a collab teacher, since I've genuinely struggled in math to the point to where I'm going, out of my way to not do assignments and everything like that. I'm struggling with senioritis right now. I'm just struggling with trying to turn in the assignments. But back then it used to be a thing where, I could only do half of the assignments. I could only really just wait till I got to school to have them explain to me on the assignments from the night before and then try to keep with the classwork that's going on still. And it was an ongoing struggle, a lifetime of struggle. It was a lot. It really was. And it's encompassed half of my academic career. So I just feel like it's really important to emphasize that if I can do it, you can do it, especially with all the targets on my back and all the people who were telling me that this is somehow a definition of how smart I'm going to be or how my intellectual capabilities will look over the course of my life. Just know this is not the limit. If you're struggling, it's because you're trying, and you will get to a place to where you understand the way your mind works and what you need to do to change, to alter, to benefit, to eventually get in a place where you can maintain a good and healthy relationship with your ADHD and with your perception of your intelligence. So with that being said, I looked at some different websites and things, and what I found is medicalnewstoday.com. And they have just a few different characteristics that are benefits of people with ADHD. And I thought I might just grab onto a few and explain that these are real. If you're watching the video and you don't have ADHD and you don't really understand what it's like, and maybe you're undiagnosed, whatever the situation may be, just curious, really listen to these and just understand that these are real. I actually have these characteristics. And yes, anybody can have them. It's not because you have ADHD that you have these superpowers or these particular characteristics. You can have them as a person outside of that aspect of your identity. But because you have ADHD, these are things that are often found more commonly in that group of people. So with that being said, the first one is resilience. And what I tell you, as much as I've struggled with ADHD, I would never reverse the brain chemistry, nothing, the heredity, nothing. I love it. I love having ADHD. I remember, and these are just the sweeter aspects of it, I remember having some of the funniest moments with my mom because of the things that I said when I was younger because of my ADHD. And these are moments that a lot of people probably didn't have with their parents when they were younger because they didn't have that really crazy hyperactive nature about them. But I definitely did. And I said some stuff that was really out of pocket. Just for an example, there was a time where I went to the doctor's office and there was the doctor, coming in. I felt like it was 30, 45 minutes late. I don't know how old I was, maybe 8 or 9. And I was like, "You're late." And of course my mom is embarrassed, "Malia, be quiet. Why would you say that? Da, 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 da." And my my hyperactive self was like, she's late, she's whatever. And if you're black and you know that look that your mom gives you and you do stuff like that, girl, I was gonna be dead by the time we got back to the house. Now, of course, it was a funny laughing matter in the moment. The doctor was super serious, so not really for her as much for us. But it's just moments like that that just remind me like how innocent it was, and like how it would express itself in so many ways that now give me like good memories. Another instance is we went out to eat, and there was a waitress who had a gold tooth of some sort. And I actually remember saying this. And she was like, oh, what do you think you're gonna get? Are you gonna get the wings or the this or the that? And I was like, what's that thing in your mouth? And I just like listened to myself like from back then. And I just sound like obviously like the most crude, rude little kid. But what it really was is, like I said, my ADHD is expressing itself in this way that really is just the hyperactivity and all of the immaturity that comes along with it, right? And just the impulsive part of it, because there are downsides to it that affect who you are for a time in your life when you don't really have some sort of maintenance schedule just yet on how to grasp hold of the hyperactivity, the impulsive stuff, the risk taking. Like, these are big things that controlled aspects of my life for a pretty long time, and sometimes even now. And honestly, it really helps now to just be able to look back and laugh and say, I'm glad that period is over with, because it was a freaking wild ride. And it traveled me up to high school and all of it, but that's a whole other story. But one aspect I would say is that I have so many beautiful memories just because I was kind of that out-of-pocket, very outspoken kid. I would also say that because of those experiences, I wouldn't change any of it. So when we talk about things like resilience, which I totally got off track, but when we talk about things like resilience and the other things on this list that, you know, describe people with ADHD, you really have to look at it from a perspective, if you don't have it, as if this is the best thing that could have ever happened to somebody. You know, it makes you tougher, it makes you stronger, because I see people in my friend group all the time who took all honors classes, were in the gifted program, fought really, really hard to have their college scholarships that they do now during senior year, second semester. And yes, good for them, love them to death. But let me tell you, let them have a bad grade on a test and their world crumbles underneath their feet. They don't have the mental capacity to really withstand the hard moments of academic failure, because we all fail sometimes. We all get the C's, the D's, the F's, and regardless if you give yourself excuse for failing or not, we all do it sometimes. So coming from a perspective where I had always expected myself to fail, and then seeing myself defeat the odds, redefine what it meant to be smart, nobody was stopping me. Like, if I got a C, like I literally had a C. This full disclosure, I literally had a C in my Algebra 3 class, like last grading period. And what did I do? I have continuously gotten good grades on my tests to up my final grade in that class, because when this final comes around, it's gonna kick me in the ass. And if I get a C on it, I need to make sure that my grade in the class is strong enough to not be dropped 25,000% if I do. And you know, you find ways to get around the system when it comes to grades, but the point of it is that I had the mental ability, the mental strength to accept that sometimes the grade is not going to reflect the work that I put in. But people who are constantly, and excuse the dogs barking in the back, the people who are constantly getting the grades for the work that they didn't necessarily have to put in. I know people who have literally not had to do any of the homework assignments. They take the test, do the homework assignments after, have done maybe half of them, none of them, got a bad grades on the homework, taking the test 100%. Some people don't have to work as hard as us people with ADHD do to understand these concepts that honestly can be very complex. Algebra 3 is not easy by any freaking standard. I don't care what anyone says. It's been hard for me, and I've struggled with it, and I've gone to the Math Help Center, I've talked to my teacher, I've asked for help, extra help, and did everything in my power, and I've still got a C and a D, and sometimes even come damn near close to failing a test or a quiz. And you know why? Because the ADHD and the way that my brain processes things sometimes just doesn't allow for the studying and the hours put into the homework and the questions after class and the questions that are answered during the fact to come through in those moments where I gotta answer the question correctly on a test. It happens, and it still happens. So it's not that the struggle ends because I'm stronger. It's not because, oh great, I get to put away these years of snap classes or whatever, that it's over now, and now I can be resilient because I'm being successful all the time. No, I'm successful now because I understand that to be resilient, you have to fail over and over and over and over again, and multiple times in your life. Not just this one point, not just this, not just one here. No, your whole life is a fight. And that's something that I think people who haven't had to fight, people who've had the privilege of moving throughout their classes and literally not giving a shit about the curriculum or the homework assignments and still scoring pretty well on the test just because they grasp the concept for whatever reason, yeah, that's a privilege that the rest of us didn't have, and we worked harder than you and still didn't get the grade. So it toughens you up. Believe me, it does. I've seen people break down and cry over grades that were sufficient. Maybe a C, but they had an A in the class, they were fine. Maybe it was a D, maybe it was a B. And I see people sob, cry, and their grading class is only going down to a B or maybe a lower A. It happens all the time, and it's because they're taking for granted the ability to understand things quickly and to grasp things in a way that they can perform whatever way on a quiz and still have the greatest grade in the class. Then it only knocks it down a few decimal places. For the rest of us, you just have to work hard. So believe me when I say it freaking helps. Now the next benefit is hyper focus. Now I'm gonna mix the next two together. So it's hyper focus and the next one is creativity. When I tell you, ever since I was younger, my mom has literally told me how I've had the ability to literally color an entire coloring book in one day at like the earliest ages of 3 and through 5. That's a pretty big deal, especially for a kid with ADHD who was pretty much told, oh, she's so outspoken, she's kind of rambunctious, you're gonna have need a little more help with her. Or, I was one of those kids that got comments like that told to their parent, and even sometimes to my face. And for me to be able to sit down and just color a coloring book for however many hours it took me or minutes, that was a pretty big deal. And it just goes to show you that ADHD may have one aspect like focus and hyperactivity that makes you think that, oh, I can't ever focus. Oh, I can't ever be calm. But that's a lie. You can be calm. You can be focused. You just need to be focused in a different way. Let me ask you this. How many people with ADHD are watching this who can listen to music, really loud music, and study at the same time? Listen to music and read a book. I can. You want to know why? Because my brain is never really just in this stagnant state of, and nobody's is, right? Nobody's brain is just in a stagnant state of never having any thoughts, always just focusing on one little thing. No, we're all thinking and feeling and experiencing different things when we're doing one task. But the thing about the brain with ADHD is sometimes your brain is trying to do multiple tasks and you're focused on one thing. So when that's happening, you can literally learn to multitask. Mentally, you could be doing something, physically doing something else. I could be singing the lyrics to a song and reading a book. You know what I mean? But still remember what the page says. So I don't know if that's just me, but I've had the ability to literally multitask in those two different realms. Mentally here, but physically here. Flipping pages, doing like that. So, and even just earlier, I was listening to music and I was writing a poem and I was doing this and I was doing that. That's just how my mind works. And that's how my mind and my body work together and have this symbiotic relationship by way of ADHD. So there is a way. And when you talk about creativity, my poems, I literally, blasting Alicia Keys, Michelle Nignatello, don't play with me. I can get that stuff done. It is a state of hyper focus. If I get to a place where I need to sit down and get something done, no matter how long it takes me to get it done, it'll get done. It'll get done. Let me tell you that honors English class, when I had to read The Book Thief all in one night, it got done. It was done. And you know why it was done? Because of a state of hyper focus that I entered. And just this ability to concentrate, but also balance your racing mind and hyperactivity by entertaining it with music or the study, whatever you got to do. Maybe you have a squish ball, maybe you have a fidget spinner, whatever the situation is. So you're kind of entertaining that part of your mind while you're also physically doing what you need to do. That being said, it's actually something that I feel like kind of blends into this next adjective, which is conversational and really good at expressing humanity. And I feel like these two things coincide for real. I am the most empathetic person you will ever meet. Now, don't take this video and these compliments as to say that I'm just using this as an excuse to hype my little self up. Although that would be nice, I'm not going to do that for this video. I'm just saying that these characteristics do apply to this disorder. And it is time that we hear some positive things being said about mental disorders of this nature, like autism, ADHD, Asperger's, so on and so forth. We need to re-educate and redirect the conversation far past just, this is what you can't do, but this is what you can do, and what you can do in a capacity that is far greater than that of somebody who is neurotypical. And that's just up here. That's the end of the story, girl. You do have a superpower. You do. And it's about time that we start talking about it. So we talk about conversational skills. I mean, I think it's kind of obvious. I do have conversational skills. I've just seen, if you watch any of my discussion videos, talk to any of my friends. But far beyond that, all I'm saying is, when it comes to the amount of engagement we get in conversation with others, not to say that all people with ADHD are extroverted, but at least the people I've encountered that are extroverted, we usually do kind of thrive in these very social environments because they're very mentally stimulating. And I think the thing that a lot of people with ADHD struggle with is feeling mentally stimulated. I need to be mentally stimulated, literally. And that's why I say the key to my heart is the key to my mind, because when you mentally stimulate me, I am there with you. And that's in friendships, that's in romantic relationships, that's in everything. Because my mind is always going 1,000 miles per hour. For neurotypical people, they can be calm when they want to be calm. They can be energetic when they want to be energetic. Not to say that they don't have anxiety and everything else, but ADHD is a different experience, and you do experience feelings of hyperactivity. Like literally feeling like everything is just bouncing off the walls 5,000 miles per hour. Like it happens, like seriously. So when you are in that state of a conversation and you're fully engaged with the way the other person is moving through the conversation, talking to you, how you're observing them, all of it, like it's literally a state of, it's a mix of, like, I would say the hyper focus, but it's also just the ability to really just be entertained and kind of enthralled in what's happening. And not saying you can't get bored or you can't move on with somebody else or conversation with somebody else and just, become disengaged if it's not as mentally stimulating as you want. Because I've seen that too, with sometimes people with ADHD, they'll be talking to you but maybe looking around or, because they're not as engaged. But just to say that in these kind of social gatherings and environments, I think that we sometimes are better than our counterparts, neurotypical counterparts, at really showcasing our engagement. Because we're like, finally, especially if the person matches your energy, because you're like, finally, I get to be energetic, I get to race at 1,000 miles per hour and not be, perceived as crazy. Because we do move faster in our energy and the way we communicate and we talk and we engage. So it's just nice to feel that match and that kind of engagement and conversation. So I do think we are really good conversationalists. And I've gotten that a lot from people, where people have said she's very personable to my mom, family members, whomever, she's genuine. And it's just because there's a lot of time and attention that goes into my conversation with people. Because with having ADHD, I don't want to be that person who's kind of like looking around like, totally. And they're like, what did I just say? You don't want to be that person, because I've been that person. So I've taken the time to really invest in conversation, and also invest in conversation that's engaging to me. So when I'm there, I'm all there and I'm excited and I'm stimulated and I'm ready to give all of my focus to you. So, as much as practice as it is taken, because we've all had billions of conversations, so it's practice, obviously. But it's also a state of like engagement and being entertained, right? I'm entertained by people. A lot of us are. So it's definitely goes hand in hand with humanity, because through conversation we expand our humanity. And that leads me to spontaneity and courage. And that I have after that, of course, there is high energy. See, they knew what they were doing with this list. So, with the spontaneity and courage and high energy, I've kind of already touched on that, but I would just say this. So, spontaneity and courage. The downsides of spontaneity and courage and high energy is the impulsivity and the sometimes enjoyment that comes along with taking a risk. I'm not going to get into the details of all the risk taking I've done. It's not ever been life-threatening, but let's just say that I could have made some better decisions at some points in my life. I'm still young, you might as well do it while you're young, I guess. But all I'm going to say is that, you have to be watchful of yourself, because I think sometimes we give in to our impulsivity because it feels good in the moment, but like anything, that's temporary. So you've got to get to a place to where you're kind of like, am I going to just do this right now because it feels good right now, or am I going to do this right now because I'm thinking about how I'm going to feel about it tomorrow? So that's the downside with the spontaneity and courage and high energy. Now the good side is that although you have a lot of like high energy and courage, I do think sometimes I've been perceived to be a bit like, how do I say? I think sometimes people take my confidence or my courage or my ability to be so comfortable with myself and so like open and able to really just put myself out there on a platter and be vulnerable. I think people have sometimes taken that either to their advantage or taken it for granted in my relationships, and that goes as friendships as well. But I also think that people have also at times just taken that to think that I am like enthralled with myself and like I just like talking about myself, and I'm like, this kind of cocky person, when really I just said what I said. I'm confident in what I said, and I have the courage to come from a place of vulnerability but also confidence. And I think that confuses people because they think the two contradict one another, but you can be spontaneous and be courageous without necessarily being a risk taker, or without necessarily thinking that nobody's going to oppose what it is that you're proposing. So, there are some mixed responses with that. Same with high energy. Sometimes people take me to be annoying. Other times people take me to be relatable. They're like, finally somebody who's like me, who also has a bunch of energy, who's a little bit crazy on the inside, great. And then there's people who are like, whoa, you're moving 1,000 miles per hour and I'm on 0. Relax, Like, let's take these examples. I met a girl in one of my classes and our energy just clicked. And we were like friends right off the start, like literally right off the bat. The conversation just flowed. Just because we probably were both coming from a place of wanting to engage, and like I said, being entertained by interaction with people, because a lot of us high energy, hyperactive people need interactions with others, introverted, extroverted or not, to really mentally stimulate ourselves. So that was an easy interaction for me. It was great. I have friends of mine all the time. My past relationship, ex-girlfriend told me, you ever realize you switch subjects a lot in a sentence, or in a conversation? And I'm sure you guys see it on these videos too. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I never realized. And she sent me this video on TikTok of this girl switching subjects, and this guy had filmed it, her boyfriend. And I'm like, I'm thinking like, oh, she's not gonna like me anymore, whatever. And she said the sweetest thing. She said, it's cute, it's adorable. It just goes to show that you're, really engaged in my presence, and you really kind of want to entertain me. So you're you're excitedly switching between subjects to see which one I like more, which one, that's just how you are. My childhood best friend of mine, he would say that, it's cute too, or that it's admirable because it keeps the conversation flowing and that it's never boring. I also had another friend tell me the same thing, that things are never boring in a conversation with you because you're always talking about something new, something different. You're always changing people's minds and just being kind of this open book. So I'm telling you, ADHD has really shaped my personality and who I am. Now, obviously, a lot of that is just me as a person and my character and how I've been raised and so on and so forth. But ADHD has influenced a lot of that too. So along with the high energy, I would say that, those are the more positive aspects of it. But I've had people, one time I was in a conversation with a guy at the high school, and he's like, you just switch subjects. I can't keep up with you. And he kind of looked at me like I was overwhelming him. And I never had a moment like that, because a lot of people, at least I perceive them to like that, because they never kind of withdraw and they're like, why are you talking so fast, or whatever. And I've had people say relax or calm down, which has always offended me, because I'm like, here I am trying to be a positive ray of sunshine. Don't tell me to calm down. But, when he kind of was like, you just switch subjects, like almost like done with the conversation. So I just ended it at that point, because I was like, you don't get me, you don't understand me, next. But I think sometimes what we have to understand as people is that, as with ADHD, is that we are rare. There's not very many people that, can keep up with us. So for the people that can, applause to you, kudos to you. But for the rest of you in the world, you can either choose to express that differently or be kinder to us. But, just know that we, as well as people with ADHD, are trying our best. And, our world moves faster than you all. So try to have some empathy with us and understand that we're really coming from a place of, a place of wanting to be engaging when we're switching subjects, and not so much this disoriented, immature place. We're really just trying to engage and be our best selves with whomever we're talking to. We get into the part of the video where we talk about the alternative medicine that I have used to really kind of shape this process of mine and this experience of mine, because it's been a wild ride with ADHD, as some of the stories I've told you and, examples I've given you. It's been quite a wild ride, and I'm sure that ride is not gonna stop anytime soon. So I just want you all to kind of get an idea of where things have been at, and also just learn a little bit from this. So we're going to start with the alternative medicines that I have been exposed to and that I have taken for purposes outside of ADHD, but also for ADHD. So the first one is going to be ashwagandha. And ashwagandha really helps assist with stress reduction, anxiety, depression, so on and so forth. And also, in a certain study, not that many years ago, I forget what year it was specifically, but it was used to aid and see if it could actually help grow muscles. So there's that as well. It's pretty new, it's pretty popular, all the youngins are on it, whatever. But you can take it, there's the powdered form, you can, mix it with teas. I like doing that. Those look like this. And I just get this from, the African natural store that's not too far away from my house. But I would say, as far as ashwagandha is concerned, it makes me feel a little bit like a zombie. So that's if I take 2 capsules. If I take 1, it's tolerable in the sense that I do feel calmer and I feel more so in control of each and every response I have to my, hyperactivity. But I do sometimes feel really, really sleepy. So if you need to get a lot of stuff done, maybe don't take this, in the morning time. Maybe take it at night when you're beginning to wind down a little bit and work is done and you're kind of just looking to relax. I feel like it's okay for that purpose as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be healing anything that's hurting or healing, just to relax. I understand that. I've done it myself too. But as far as 2 capsules is concerned, I would say just stick it to 1, which is about the serving size, because once you get down to 2, if you have ADHD, you start to feel like a zombie, because our world moves so much faster than the average rate, to the point to where anything that doesn't feel like it's moving 1,000 miles per hour feels very, very slow. And that's why I like to say people with ADHD are the runners. They're not the walkers. It wasn't until just recently that I was able to actually walk and enjoy it, because I just felt like I was moving too freaking slow. And even now, I'm like, damn, I'm moving too goddamn slow. I hate walking. But the thing about walking is, and the thing about ashwagandha is, if you get my analogy, is that sometimes it's not about just speeding through everything. It's about enjoying all the little moments, catching all the little details, and really just bettering your understanding of the present moment. And that's just a whole other conversation about mindfulness, but ashwagandha is good for that. And I would definitely recommend it, regardless of the fact that it does sometimes make me feel like I am really sleepy. I just want to remind you sometimes that the reality is not that I'm sleepy as much as it's just that I feel like my world is moving a lot slower. And I like my world moving fast because I've learned how to move in the world when it's super quick and it's super fast. And I've learned how to calm myself down with things like meditation and routine and ritual and exercise. But for those of us whose world is moving really quickly and they don't know how to do anything about it, I'd say pop them 2 capsules of calories. But just starting off with one, just see what you think, try it out for at least 3 weeks. Give it a month, give it some time, because just see how you respond to it. See how your body responds to it, see how you feel. And then another one that I like to mention is that, ashwagandha, as well as this next alternative medicine, which is kanna, is also really helping aid with depressive thoughts and feelings of mine. Because I've heard this, that people with ADHD, oftentimes who have a higher IQ, can be more likely to get depressed. I would never say personally that I've been diagnosed with depression. It's been suggested that I see a psychiatrist, full disclosure, because I tested a certain way on one of the paper psych evaluations in a way that maybe would have been taken for major depression. My dog had just died. I had a lot going on. It was later discovered that I did not, in fact, have depression, but I did have anxiety, as most people do. But just keep in mind that, regardless of your diagnoses and everything, alternative medicines aren't necessarily prescriptions. Like, these are just suggestions. These aren't necessarily going to heal, take away, subtract, or eliminate, eradicate anything that you're experiencing in terms of mental health and or even just physical body aches and pains and anything. Sometimes it just helps reduce the symptoms for a period of time, of course, between dosages, but does it actually get rid of it? No. But then does anything get rid of it? No. It takes a lot of work at that. So, on to the next medicine, which is kanna. Pretty much the same. Once again, same African natural store. They only really recommend 1 capsule, super simple. So my thing is, kanna, I see the effects of ashwagandha a bit more than I do kanna. Now, taking the 2 at the same time, once again, just a 1 capsule situation for both, could be equally as effective. Sometimes it makes me feel pretty sleepy. I would say it's good for stress reduction. I definitely feel like ashwagandha has taken the cake in terms of stress reduction. But I would say that kanna also really helps with the mental health aspect of like the depressive thoughts and feelings, anxiety for sure, stress, but also just making the world move a lot slower. And that's why I specifically suggest these 2 for ADHD, because there's a lot of stuff out there in the market, but I don't necessarily think all the things on there on the market have anything to do with the side effects and the symptoms of ADHD. Now, if you're going to if you're taking some sort of ADHD medication, which I'm not, and I don't know if I clarified earlier, but I haven't been taking ADHD medication in years because personally I've found ways to work around it and with it. But, if you are no longer taking ADHD medication, I would say go ahead and give it a try without a doctor's approval, depending upon your age. But if you are still taking ADHD medication, of course, I would counsel with your doctor first, just to see how that interacts with your prescriptions, depending upon what it is that you're taking. So those are definitely my biggest, my biggest recommendations in regards to ADHD, just because, like I said, that calming effect, that kind of like, let's rear it in, the world ain't moving that quick, girl, type of medication, because sometimes you need to feel that way. And sometimes you don't want the world to be moving so freaking fast. And I know with being a senior in high school that things get tough, things get rough, and sometimes you just need to shut up and lay down and take a nap. And these things can help you do that sometimes without all of the racing thoughts and everything. So I definitely understand. So with that being said, I'm going to leave you with a very simple message, and that is share your story in the comment section. And remember that ADHD can be a superpower, and it can be something that you decide to redefine and really take full advantage of. Don't allow it to hold you back just because you inherited it, because something happened and now you got it, or you were diagnosed with it later on in life. Don't let that stop you from being the best version of yourself, learning everything you can about it, and learning to embrace, accept, and love yourself more because you found out that you have ADHD. So take this little piece of advice, take my experiences, and really see what you can do to grow as a person because of it. I love you, hippies, and thank you so much for 185 subscribers. Bye!